Okay, we are live on YouTube.
All right, welcome everybody. It's House Energy and Digital Infrastructure. It is Thursday, May 15th, and we're just going to have a quick minute discussion about some work that we are going to get done tomorrow and Tuesday on a provision that the Senate has added to S319 about the Rygate plant up in the kingdom. So let's see, just to bring folks up to speed a little bit, I've learned a little bit more. So looks like the language is definitely in the bill, but unclear whether it needs to go from Senate Natural Resources to Senate Finance. So I'm still not 100% sure when it's going to be messaged over from the Senate, hit the calendar, and be on the floor. But, you know, we have a couple days. So, so far, what I've done is that we're going to hear from the clerk of the House. I thought this would be helpful to me and to everybody in the committee just to get a refresher on how the House rules work at the end of the session here, especially when we start seeing bills bouncing back and forth with proposed amendments and stuff. So we'll talk about that with the clerk. We'll introduce her in a second. Ledge Council is confirmed for 8:30 tomorrow to walk us through the language. And I have the language in my inbox, so I'm going to send that to everybody as soon as we're done here, so you can all give it a read. It's a very small section of the bill. And then we have reached out to TJ Ford from DPS, Greg Faber from the PUC, and Commissioner Fitzgerald of Forest Parks and Rec to learn a little bit more about this. So a couple things. One is PUC is unable to join us for testimony at that time. I have a little email back and forth with Greg. I asked him if he'd submit written testimony. Looks like he's just emailing back and forth with me. So I'll just forward this email to the committee. And if folks need to hear more from the PUC, you can reach out on your own. If they can't come in on Tuesday, I'm not sure how much additional time we'll have. So TBD on that, but I'll forward this along from the PUC. I don't think we've heard back from TJ yet at the department or Commissioner Fitzgerald. So right now, my plan is we'll hear from, and we've invited the owner of the Rygate project.
Not yet. Still waiting on the contact.
Okay, he'll tell her and she will come. So Tuesday we'll be hearing from Rygate. I hope we'll hear either in person or in writing from DPS. We're hearing in writing for PUC, and we've invited Forest Parks and Rec. So that's the plan right now. And at that point, we'll have a better sense tomorrow, I'm sure, about when we're going to do our straw poll vote and when it's going to be on the floor. All right. So that's all I know. It's essentially pushing out a day by a year. Okay. The clerk.
I'm Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we be allowed to take our jackets off.
Division. Roll call. Yeah, that's fine. It's like, that was wild.
I've never seen that fail.
I have never seen that fail.
I think it has failed.
Really?
I haven't had to do, that was the first division on it.
Okay.
I was less surprised, even the level of irritation that they spoke after.
How does somebody tell 3/4 on a voice vote like that? What's that close?
So unless so the speaker listens to your voice votes and she would rule on what she thought she heard for yes or no, but then a member called for a division.
Yeah.
And so then we did the count by the vote by division.
Did she ever call for a division if she was unsure?
She could do that, yes.
I was one of them again today, by the way.
You
I was one of them.
Okay, for the record,
For the record, Betsy Ann Rath, Clerk of the House, thanks for having me.
Yeah,
I'm Chair. I'm here to talk about committee procedure and the procedure of a bill as it moves through the process. I believe you're specifically asking about a House bill that has passed the House and now the bill's in the Senate. Is that where we're at? Or
I'd say start with some of the stuff that we chatted about last week. And then again this morning. So when I think the chain of custody, the chain of possession, let's start at the very beginning.
Perfect. Okay. So I'll take you through 3 readings, first of all. So every bill must have 3 readings in each chamber. So first reading is when the bill is introduced. So it's when a bill is being read for the first time. And if it's not a committee bill, it gets referred to the committee of jurisdiction. The speaker assigns it to the appropriate committee by our House rules. So on first reading, the bill is read and the speaker refers it to the Committee on Energy and Digital Infrastructure. If the committee takes up the bill and votes it out with your committee report, then it gets placed on the notice calendar with your committee report. And it's one day on the notice calendar. Second day, it goes to action calendar. By day, I mean legislative day. For second reading.
Go ahead.
And second reading, the bill is read the second time. Committee gives their report. If you have an amendment, House has to vote on your recommended amendment in your committee report. And then the final question that the House votes on at second reading is, shall the bill be read a third time? Because each chamber has to read a bill 3 times. If the House votes yes, then it advances the next day on the action calendar to third reading. And if there are any amendments, House votes on those before third reading. And then the final question on third reading is, shall the bill pass? So if that vote is yes in the affirmative, the bill is passed. And unless there's a motion to suspend rules, the bill holds over in the chamber office for 1 legislative day to allow for a reconsideration day.
Okay.
Chair.
So one thing that we talked about, and I want to make sure I understand, is that after first reading, when it's referred to committee, our committee possesses the bill.
Yes,
And once we vote it out and it moves to the floor, we no longer possess the bill for the rest of its lifetime.
that is correct. So that's a great point to make. So let's say this committee recommended a strike all amendment to a hypothetical bill. And then after it's left your possession, you have that committee report. It's on the notice calendar. And you're moving to action calendar the next day. And you realize that shall should have been a may. We need to fix that. You no longer have possession. So the Committee on Energy and Digital Infrastructure can't offer an amendment to your committee report because the committee cannot offer an amendment when you no longer have possession. But if you take a straw poll and say, we should have had a may there instead of a shall, then any individual members of this committee or anybody else can offer an amendment to your report. It has to be the individual members, can't be the committee, because the Committee on Energy and Digital Infrastructure can't offer an amendment when the bill is no longer in possession. Relatedly, when you no longer have possession, you're always doing straw poll votes because it's not an official vote that has any procedural significance.
Okay.
So we're at the point of third reading. Question is, shall the bill pass? The House votes to pass the bill. Unless there's a motion to suspend rules, the bill holds over in the chamber for 1 legislative day to allow for reconsideration day. Just like the one last shot where a member who votes on the prevailing side on the previous question can move to reconsider that question. It doesn't happen frequently, but it's an option. That's why we don't message it until the end of the next legislative day to the Senate. Once the bill goes to the Senate, it has to read the bill 3 times if the Senate wants to pursue the bill that whole time. So if that House bill passes the House chamber, it's messaged to the Senate, and then they read the bill for the first time, and their presiding officer refers it to the appropriate committee. Let's say it's the Senate Committee on Natural. Senate Committee on Natural takes up the bill. If they want to pursue the bill, they'll do the same thing that you did, vote out a committee report, and it goes on to the Senate's notice calendar. proceeds to action calendar. It's the same process for second reading. They go through that same process. If it advances to third reading, shall the bill be read a third time? If they vote yes, it goes on the next day's action calendar for third reading. And let's say the Senate ultimately concurs with proposal, passes the bill in concurrence with proposal of amendment. So the Senate has proposed an amendment to a House bill. From there, the procedural path narrows. The whole point of our rules, if the chambers agree, is to pass a bill. So if the bill passes the Senate in concurrence with proposal of amendment, that Senate proposal of amendment goes immediately to our notice calendar. And that is pursuant to House Rule 33. A bill never goes back to the Committee of Jurisdiction unless there's a motion to commit that's agreed to. And this is just how our rules work. And if you want to look at our calendar today, there's a great example of this. You have your calendar handy, or Jack, for sending this. I can also pull it up on your screen, Madam Chair, if you'd like.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay, thank you to Jack for giving me the
So the
Zoom link.
Senate, just to go back, so the Senate gets our bill. They concur with proposal of amendment. They've got some changes. Comes out of committee on their side, goes to the House floor, and from there,
Senate floor.
yeah, I'm sorry, to the Senate floor. And from there, it goes straight to the the House notice calendar.
Oh, once it passes the Senate?
Yeah.
Yes. And I'll show you, we have a great example of that just today, just to show you what that looks like. Behind me?
Yeah.
Here's our calendar from today. And here's a great example of what that looks like. So our calendar always starts with action calendar up top. See those Senate proposals of amendment? That's everything you voted on today. Okay, but those Senate proposals of amendment that you voted on today from the action calendar yesterday were on our notice calendar. And I'll show you H401. It's just our one Senate proposal of amendment that's on our notice calendar today. So that's a House bill. It went through that process, passed the House. The Senate did their 3 readings. They decided they wanted to pursue the bill. They didn't concur. They proposed a further amendment to the bill. So it has to come back to us with the Senate proposal of amendment. It goes straight to our notice calendar. There was no motion to commit H401 to the committee. There usually is not. It's a possibility, but the House would have to vote on it. That didn't happen today. So automatically tomorrow, you'll see that Senate proposal of amendment on H401 is going to advance to our action calendar tomorrow, just like those 3 bills up top did, those Senate proposals of amendment.
Okay.
Those 3 bills on our action calendar, those 3 Senate drops that you voted, well, you voted on the first 2, you did a motion, postpone action on the third one, 481. For whatever reason, the committee, there was a motion to postpone because for whatever reason, it wasn't ready to be considered today. For
Okay.
example, but it was the bill reporter who made that motion to postpone action on H481 today. So that'll show up tomorrow on your action calendar as action postponed until Friday. For the pending question, the pending question is always going to be by House Rule 62, shall the House concur in the Senate proposal of amendment? That's not your only option. Let's say that, we'll just take that hypothetical, that if, for example, the Committee of Jurisdiction takes their straw poll vote and the committee thinks that there should be a tweak, an amendment to the language that the Senate sent back over. Individual members of the committee or anyone in the chamber can propose a further amendment there too, to that bill.
Okay. So this is good to know because now we've got our second, the second time this has happened. So going back to our first experience, so S50 came back with one proposed further amendment.
Mm-hmm.
We took some testimony, we did a straw poll. I reported it on the floor and the House voted to concur. If we had not been you know, if we had wanted to further change that Senate language, we could not do that as a committee. An individual member of the committee would have needed to bring an amendment, right?
That is correct.
Okay. Rep. Howland?
But that individual member could be a member of this committee. Yes.
That is right. Or anybody else in the
Right,
House
I
chamber.
understood
Yes,
anybody
yes,
else,
yeah.
but even,
Got it.
even the chair can do that, or is there a little, there's no, anybody?
No
All
restriction.
150 individually.
Well, speaker usually does not.
159,
Yes,
excuse me.
yes,
All right,
yes.
thank you.
Okay, so we could agree with that language, or we could say, oh, we don't really like this, we want to change this or that. And then one of us would need to bring an amendment,
Correct.
and then straw poll, because we don't possess the bill.
Correct.
Then it comes back to the floor. Well, I guess it never technically left.
That's right.
Yeah, so amendment, straw poll, discussed and voted on the floor, and then back to then it would have gone, instead of going straight to the governor, it would have gone back to the Senate with further proposal of amendment.
Correct.
Okay, Rep. Barn?
So the straw polls have no binding effect. Is that
Right.
accurate?
No
It's just to show an
Yeah.
intent of the committee to the body.
Correct. It has no procedural significance. Unlike your committee report, when you actually have to vote a bill out of your committee, that's the thing about committee possession. If you don't agree with the bill, the committee does not vote the bill out. It's going to stay up there. So that's the procedural significance of the committee actually having a formal vote to actually favorable with amendment or favorable to actually get the bill out of your committee back into the possession of the House.
That is interesting, because if we possess a bill and we are actually taking a formal vote and it fails here in the committee,
Yes.
it's dead, it doesn't go to the floor. If we've got something like the S50 amendment, we could have voted 0-9 against it, and still I just would have stood up on the floor and said, our straw poll was 0-9. It still would have been on the floor for consideration.
Right, the pending question would have been, shall the House concur in the Senate proposal of amendment? So then the
And we
House would
would-
have to vote on that.
Okay,
And if you wanted the bill to survive, something would have had to happen. We would offer another amendment there, further proposal amendment there too, or maybe the House doesn't agree with your straw poll vote.
yeah. Okay, yeah, Rep. Howland?
So the two procedures are an amendment by some member or a motion to commit.
Right,
Okay, so you
to get it back to the committee.
get it, a motion to commit brings it back to committee. A motion to amend stays on the floor to finish up the motion that's on the floor.
And my sense, just from my time here of motion to commit, is that it's pretty unusual. I feel like it happens when a bill is, you're sending it back to die, or to wait until the next year, or because it really needs further additional, it would be like if we really felt that we needed to take extensive, I'm just trying to understand when, because I see those, and usually on the floor, it's like, ooh, trouble in paradise.
Then to get it back into possession of the body, you'd actually need to vote it out again with the committee report.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay,
No, I guess it's if it's got to be more significant change than it failed to amend. A significant change as desired by someone.
that's how I've seen it used, but Betsy knows better. It's usually when something has really gone off the rails, and I think.
And like you were saying, Representative Howland, if there's not a motion to commit, then it stays on the calendar. You can keep on postponing action, and it doesn't have to be postponed action for one legislative day. If you think you're going to need a couple days to think about it as a committee and straw poll, you can make a motion to commit for 3 legislative days or until XYZ date to give yourself enough time. If you don't think it's such a substantial issue that you need to actually commit it back to committee, but the committee needs a bit of time to talk it over, get more testimony to finally reach the point of being able to take your straw poll vote on how you feel about the amendment.
So the bill comes back, a proposal of amendment is made, it's in discussion or, whatever they call it, or when you get up and speak on it, at any time, it can still be a motion to commit would take precedence over, motion, to amend.
You are so right. By House Rule 55, when any question is pending, there's a list of motions that can be made, and you are so right. The motion to commit takes precedent over the motion to amend.
Motion to commit isn't always by the chair of the meeting.
Anybody can,
Anybody in the whole body.
other than the speaker, yeah. And you'll see that from time to time. It might not be to the original committee of jurisdiction, it might be to another committee.
That's, yeah, that's,
Oh,
well, it's, you know, I've seen those often be, I mean, politically an attempt to like derail the bill or shunt it onto a side car or
Or
something.
to obtain more information.
Yeah, yeah, I've seen that too. I've seen it both ways, like when a bill is, you know, referred to another committee just because like judiciary needs to hear it or gov ops needs to hear it or some other committee needs to hear it. And then I've also seen it every once in a rare while be, you know, more of a, sometimes it's thin because sometimes it's more political, sometimes. Yeah,
Well, but I mean, if with this Rygate deal, we start getting testimony, tomorrow, and somebody feels we should spend some more time on it, that a committee should have jurisdiction, then we take that motion to amend.
Yes, once the bill comes back,
Well, right,
if you feel
on the
the
floor.
need to.
Right,
Yeah, but the House would have to agree to that. Okay. Yep.
well, yeah, one has to be agreed to by the House, but,
or if we need more time for testimony, the simpler step would just simply to say, hey, can we postpone action by one legislative day? We need to hear from X, Y, and Z person.
so the motion to postpone, where does that sit in your commitment?
Postpone is above commit. So it's of a higher.
Higher priority, so
Yeah.
your motion for postpone is superior to.
Correct. Yeah.
And that happens quite a bit. Like if we take testimony on Tuesday on Rygate and there's really some burning issue and we really feel that, you know, we need more time, that's not that big of a deal. Like usually we get a sense of the committee and I just go to the speaker and say, can we postpone action by one legislative day? We're not quite done. She almost always says, sure. And then I just stand up the next day and say, can we postpone by one legislative day? And that just buys us one more day to do our straw poll. And then in the case of the Rygate, I wanted to talk about the Rygate thing too, because that's a little bit different for us because we never even had that bill. So we're just doing, you know, what's called like a flyby or a straw poll just on one little section. So can you talk to us a little bit about how that works?
Sure. And I'm just noting also that the bill is still in the Senate committee, so you have a ways to go and to talk about this. So again, if the Senate passes that bill in concurrence with proposal of amendment and it includes that Rygate language, then it is going to, as a House bill, it's going to come onto our notice calendar with the Senate proposal of amendment. And then our standard practice is that the speaker will first turn to the original bill reporter for the original policy committee of jurisdiction for that committee to give their straw poll vote on the Senate proposal of amendment. But if the Senate proposal of amendment impacts another committee, for in this example, your committee, then the speaker could turn to a member of your committee to ask if your committee took, knowing that your committee took a straw poll vote on whatever section was it within your committee's jurisdiction.
And then I stand up and say, yes, we did, blah, 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 like I did with the S50 thing, just a brief little blurb. And our straw poll vote was blah, blah, blah.
Correct.
So in this case, the time we have, unless we hit a roadblock, is could still even go to Senate Finance,
Yeah, I went to our revenue,
Yeah.
committee.
then Senate floor, then our notice calendar. So we have more time on this one. And then meanwhile, House Environment's doing the same thing. They're gonna be taking testimony, talking about all the language that the Senate added that has to do with their committee. So we look at our part, they look at their part.
So if you commit it back to committee, it takes a number of days to bring it back out on the floor. Is there a means of expediting?
Yeah, you,
Back, I mean, my thought process here is that the clock is running and they're not gonna, commit to, an amendment, that you don't put pine logs in the biomass furnace. Again, whatever, and so they're not gonna hold the whole session over because of a bill being tied up in a committee. This apparently has some date. tied to
Does,
it.
this is time sensitive for
Okay.
Rygate.
Right, well, no, and that was my concern is that putting a delay on it that may tie it up, that doesn't get considered.
and you're raising a good point too, because if in that unusual circumstance, there is a motion to commit once it comes back, which is unusual, but it's permissible. If that motion to commit was agreed to, and then it goes to that committee, then if, again, it can stay on the wall unless the committee votes it out with a committee report. And just like you had mentioned, once a committee votes out a committee report, it has to go on the next day's notice calendar. So first of all, when it comes back to the House with the Senate proposal amendment, it's gonna go on our notice calendar. To take it up off the notice calendar, you need to have a rule suspension. If you don't get that, you have to wait for the next legislative day when it's on action calendar and then make that motion to commit. All right, let's say then the motion to commit is agreed to. Now we're on the second legislative day that it's come back. Then it goes to the committee. And then the committee would vote it out with the committee report, and it goes back on our notice calendar. It has to be on the notice calendar for one legislative day, and then goes on the next day's action calendar. So it is
Suspended somewhere
Right.
along there, there can always be a motion to suspend.
to suspend rules, yeah. But
And if the committee takes the bill and votes no on it, then it's back on the wall.
right, if that's the other thing about committee, by the motion to commit, it's taking the possession from the House as a whole, where it would have advanced the action calendar, it's bringing it back into committee, and then the committee would have to vote favorable with amendment to get it from your wall back to the possession of the House, transfer possession back to the committee to the House.
But if it fails committee to get a positive vote on the committee, it goes back on the wall. To get it back off the wall, does it have to be called from the wall by the committee, by a person who voted in the positive for that vote? Like you can't vote to reconsider if you were in the majority.
So there is language, the motion to reconsider in committee is more flexible than in the House itself. And I have to pull up my Masons because that's addressed in Masons. But the committee can make a motion to reconsider. I'm nearly certain what Mason's is gonna say is that motion can be made at any time. It's not like when you're in the House, how it's locked in, it has to be on the very next legislative day by member per day voted on prevailing side. So there is more flexibility, but you're hitting the nail on the head that it's gonna stay in the committee until the committee votes it out.
Without time limit to reconsider when it's in committee, but on the floor, it has only 1 day for the motion to be considered.
Right, so, if it doesn't get committed back to committee, when it comes back, it goes on our notice calendar to the Senate proposal amendment, notice calendar. Next day, it goes to action calendar on the pending question, shall the House concur in the Senate proposal amendment? Let's say the House voted no, and they don't do anything else. And the bill is kind of stuck. They're just kind of in a purgatory. So the next day, though, a member who voted on the prevailing side to say no can move to reconsider. So,
And how is that determined? On a vote of who was in the majority of that vote.
if it is anything, if it's voice vote or division, it's on the honor system that the person voted on the prevailing side. But if it's roll call, then we know.
Yes, I understood the roll call.
Yeah.
But the honor system.
Okay. Raphael?
Just one more, not that it's gonna happen. So it's back in the committee votes negative and stays in committee. And if anybody off the floor can call for that bill to come back out.
Yeah, House Rule 51 does allow a member to make a motion to release a committee of a bill. It's a majority vote. If that's decided in the affirmative, then it goes on the notice calendar. And then proceeds the next day, the action calendar, again, with the pending question, shall the House concur and send proposal with amendment?
Okay. So, great. I just wanted to make sure we all had a chance to think all this through and understand how the rules work. So we will, on Rygate, be just following the common path, which is that we know what's happening. We've got our heads up, basically. We'll take our testimony. We'll see how long it takes to move to the House notice calendar and how much time we have. And unless something goes awry or, we will have time to take our testimony before it even comes to the floor per the usual steps.
Right.
And if for some reason we hit a roadblock or we're running into trouble with our piece, the easiest thing would just be to request postponement for one legislative day and give us a little bit more time for a struggle.
Correct. You definitely have time on your side. Well, as we're careening toward adjournment, we hope. But that it's still in the original Senate Policy Committee of jurisdiction. I
Right.
believe it's gonna have to go to Senate Finance.
Yeah.
Up to the Senate, but we do have time and, to take that up.
Yeah, but this is a good conversation because I just want to make sure we're all, this is new to a lot of us. To see the bills start winging back and forth
Yeah.
and, to have that sense that, there's only a couple weeks left and we see all kinds of fates of fall bills at this time of year. So I just want to make sure we're doing our part properly.
So generally that it'll stay sort of on the calendar unless we keep postponing it a day. Unless it gets committed back.
Correct. Not that unusual, but
If something got committed in the morning session, could a committee meet on it? Do they have to take testimony on a bill, or can they just confer among the members of the committee and move it out of committee that evening and put it back the next morning on the notice calendar?
yeah, if you have possession, if there is a motion to commit, then it would have, you're right. If you need to do that, I just would just pose the question, what the purpose is.
I was looking at,
Yeah,
because if you make the motion to commit, you've got a big window of time you're committing the bill to
Yeah.
slow down in its procedure.
yeah,
And, I just query about, the, taking advantage of the rules, to postpone something beyond the point where it could be considered. And, we're out. This appears to me what little I find an environmental issue. And so somebody who grossly opposed to it had procedures that they could delay.
oh, yeah.
The delay of a bill, that's my
Yeah, so that's a great point, because the difference between postpone action for one legislative day means it stays on the action calendar. It's just postponed to the next day's action calendar. Whereas just what you were saying, if there's that motion to commit that's agreed to, then it goes back to the committee. And then if the committee votes it out, then it goes back on the notice calendar. It has to wait for one legislative day before going to the action calendar.
If something's a request is made to postpone for 2 legislative days, and it's next Thursday and adjournment's and eyes of Friday, can somebody motion to bring it back a day early?
That is another great question because we've already ordered it for postponing 2 legislative days. So you are hitting a lot of great points because if we are getting real close to the end of session, and I would suggest postpone for 1 legislative day, just in case you're ready. And if you're not ready the next day, just make a motion to postpone action again.
I'm on the other side. I'm worried that somebody's postponed it for 2 days
Yeah,
and put it past the Saturday, and it's not going to be considered this session. And
exactly.
I want to bring it back to Friday.
Then I think you're gonna have to do suspend the rules because you've already postponed it. Everyone's
Okay, so
believing that it's gonna be postponed 2 days.
we'll wait for it to happen.
Yep, and before we let you go, I have one more question, one more end of the session question.
Yeah.
Our counterpart, our most common counterpart is Senate, Natural Resources. Their morning committee,
Yeah.
is this their last week of work?
Oh, that is a great question. I know they're gonna, I don't know for sure. I have to go back and see what their plan is. I might be able to tell you quickly, but it's just gonna take me a moment to see if I can find it real quick.
Because after the morning committees stop meeting, if we propose further amendment, does it just go straight back to the Senate floor? Because
Well,
there's
it's gonna
nobody.
go, so first answer to your first question. Yes, this Friday, tomorrow is the last day for Senate morning committee meetings. I just pulled it up from the, pro tem chief of staff. And 2, though,
They can meet.
I believe they'll be able to meet in straw poll, but still, if they send back that bill with the Senate proposal amendment and the House ends up sending a House proposal amendment to the Senate proposal amendment, it's gonna go straight to the Senate notice calendar.
Okay,
It doesn't go, same deal. It doesn't go back to their committee. They would need to get together informally and do a straw poll if they wanted to weigh in and give their straw poll vote on your further proposal amendment.
okay, fun. All right, that was really helpful, I think. Does anybody have any more questions?
That will count.
You've been reading your book.
No, I haven't.
Yes, you